Bloody tragedy on Valentine's Day. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. February 14th is considered to be the date of Valentine's Day, which is associated with expressing love and affection to your partner, friends, family, and loved ones. Chocolates, love letters, or other gifts are used as a medium to express our affection. Valentine is closely associated with the heart symbol, Cupid, and the color pink and red. But for Chicagoans, Valentine's Day in 1929 was no longer the same. While the rest of the world celebrated with joyful laughter, they were shocked by the noise of gunfire and the tense atmosphere. Instantly, Chicago became a city full of red blood of the victims of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. What exactly happened that day in Chicago? We will talk in this video, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre was the worst gangster war in the history of the United States. The government was in the midst of a period of restriction on the production, distribution, and sale of illicit alcohol called Prohibition, 1920 to 1933. In 1917, the 18th Amendment, Prohibition, was passed to deal with the social and public health problems of alcohol addiction. But in practice, Prohibition was found to be ineffective as it created gangsters who controlled the black market, illegally produced and trafficked alcohol, and other organized criminal acts. The most famous and biggest gangster in Chicago was Al Capone, who was also involved in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the peak incident of Prohibition Amendment. In 1933, the 18th Amendment was repealed by the 21st Amendment, marking the end of the Prohibition period. Alphonse Capone, the fourth of 9 children, was born in 1899 in Brooklyn to a poor Italian immigrant family. His father was Gabriele Capone, a barber, while his mother, Tereline Capone, was a seamstress. Al was known as a good student at elementary school before his fight with a teacher in 6th grade because he was rude. The principal then called him, and he was given a beating as punishment. Since then, he never returned to school. After dropping out of school, he moved to the Park Slope neighborhood in Brooklyn, a neighborhood that was better than his family's tenement. There, he met Johnny Torria, who became the person who brought him into the underworld, and also met his wife, Mary Coughlin. Torria had a gambling business around Capone's house. Occasionally, Capone helped him because of that. They had a good relationship. At that time, Capone had not yet worked fully as a gangster. He still worked in a munitions factory and a paper cutter. He only plays with the gangsters in his spare time by vandalizing and committing minor crimes that don't attract much attention. Then Torrio introduced him to Francesco, Frankie Yale, and would-be mobster in 1917 when he was 16 years old. Frankie hired him as a bartender and bouncer at the Harvard in Coney Island. That's where he got 3 scars from his penknife, Frank Galluccio, who was upset that his sister was being harassed by Al. Then everyone gave him the nickname Scarface, which he honestly hated. At the age of 19, Al married Mary when their first child was born, who was named Albert Francis. He had moved to Baltimore, wanting to have a good and straight life for his family. There, he worked as a bookkeeper in a construction company. But when his father died in 1920, Al needed a lot of money, so he finally agreed to Torrio's invitation to return to seize great opportunities in Chicago. Since 1919, Torrio helped Big Jim Colosimo's prostitution business. With ALS help, they were able to seize Colosimo's business, which was found dead in 1920. Because of Al's ingenuity in conducting Chicago operations, Torrio took him on as a business partner. When Prohibition Amendment was enacted, bootlegging became a profitable business. Torrio focused on expanding his business into this field, so that the business he ran was not only gambling, but also prostitution and bootlegging. In 1923, Torrio and Al moved their business to Cicero, because a reformist mayor hampered their business. On March 31, 1924, in order to keep their business in Chicago, Al and Torrio started intimidating and shooting voters so that their candidate would win. The police arrived and killed Al's brother Frank. When Joe Howard was found dead, Al was suspected of doing it as revenge for his brother's death, and he was jailed for it. In 1925, Torrio decided to retire from his illicit business due to death threats. He returned to Italy, leaving the gambling, prostitution, and bootlegging business to Al. Unlike his predecessor, Torrio, who was low-key and always played it safe, Al was much more daring in showing off his luxurious life. He moved his headquarters to a fancy suite in Chicago's Metropole Hotel. Reporters began to take an interest in writing and exploring his personality. He built soup kitchens in suburban neighborhoods, gave milk to children with rickets, and often helped poor Italian Americans manage to gain the sympathy of the public. He was considered a generous Robin Hood, but also a rebel against Prohibition Amendment. In order to expand his business network and power, he had to deal with other gangsters. One of them is Northside Gang, a gangster who has long been his enemy. Incidents that occur involving the two gangsters will later tear down Al's image. The Northside Gang is a gang established by Dean O'Banion. The majority of its members are teenagers who are not yet 21 years old, but have been to prison several times. The Northside Gang is also often referred to as the Irish Gangster, as most of its members are from Northern Ireland. The gang moved to Chicago during the Prohibition period and became one of the most dangerous gangs there. The Northside Gang was actually led by 4 leaders: Dean O'Banion, Earl Jaime Weiss, Vincent the Skimmer Drucci, and Bugs Moran. When O'Banion was killed by the El Capone gang in his own flower shop on November 10, 1924, the Northside Gang's reign passed to Moran and Weiss. On October 11, 1926, Weiss was also shot dead near the Schofield Hotel by an attack arranged by Capone. Drucci also died for the same reason, the war between gangsters. However, not much information has been found regarding his death. There is only one leader of the Northside Gang left, Bugs Moran. George Bugs Moran was born in Minnesota, August 21, 1893. He grew up in a harsh environment and was involved in criminal activities from a very young age. O'Banion was his childhood friend. He entered the Northside Gang based on O'Banion's invitation. When O'Banion's business center was moved to Chicago, Moran was involved in a warehouse robbery that killed a policeman, Peter R. Bulfin, as well as several other street crime cases, before he finally entered the world of the mafia with one of his businesses of bootlegging alcohol. After O'Banion's murder, which was orchestrated by Capone, the relationship between the two gangs became increasingly intense. It climaxed in the St. Valentine's Day massacre tragedy, which bankrupted his business. Before his retirement, he participated in minor crimes, including robberies. He was accused of bank robbery and was imprisoned in the federal prison in Leavenworth. However, he was released on the charges in 1956. With the same case, he was arrested again. At the age of 65, he died in an Ohio prison in Leavenworth due to lung cancer. It was indeed the Prohibition Amendment that fueled much of the bootlegging of liquor, supported by the invention of the refrigeration machine by John Gorey in 1844. The refrigeration machine could reduce the production cost of making liquor. Gangsters competed to expand their territory and built saloons or bars. To make them more interesting, the bars not only sold liquor, but also provided prostitution and gambling services. El Capone's gang and Bugs Moran's Northside Gang fought for territory through violence and murder. Torrio, the former leader of Capone's Chicago outfit, chose to retire after receiving serious threats and bullet attacks in 1925. On September 20, 1926, Capone was also shot while he was enjoying a meal at an Italian restaurant in Chicago, Illinois. He managed to survive and escape without injury. After a failed attack on Capone, on October 11, 1926, Earl Weiss, one of the leaders of the Northside Gang, was killed near the Schofield Hotel. In 1929, Pasqualino Lolordo, Capone's right-hand man, and several of his Chicago outfit subordinates Capino of Unione Sicilia were killed. Lolordo's death, however, is still unclear. Capeno's anger and hatred led to a plan of revenge that came to be called the Valentine's Day Massacre. Reportedly, Capone ordered Jack McGurn, the best hitman in his gang who had the nickname Machine Gun, to carry out this plan. On the winter morning of February 14, 1926, 7 members of the Northside Gang were about to negotiate with Detroit's Purple Gang over the delivery of whiskey robbed from Canada to the SMC Cartage Co. garage at 2122 North Clark Street. The 7 arrived early. Moran was still on his way there. At 10:30 a.m., 4 men suddenly stormed the garage in a black Cadillac complete with police gongs, sirens, and gun racks. 2 were in police uniforms, the other 2 in casual clothes. The Cadillac car passed the car Moran was driving, so he thought the police were going to conduct a search of the garage where he did business. Finally, he chose to turn around. Little did he know, he had just escaped from death. The 4 fake cops ordered the man inside the garage to raise his hands, turn around to face the wall, and fired 70 shots until their bullets ran out. None of the men in the garage survived, except for a German dog named Highbell who was tied to the bumper of the car. Frank Gusenberg was found almost dead at the spot. He said nothing about the incident until he died. Besides Frank Gusenberg, other victims included his brother and enforcer in the Northside Gang, Peter Gusenberg, Albert Kachilek, vice chairman of the Northside Gang, Albert Weinshank, who arranged money laundering for businesses managed by the North Side Gang; Reinhard Schwimmer, a former optometrist with connections to the gang; Adam Heyer, the gang's bookkeeper; Joe May, the North Side Gang's car mechanic. Almost all members who had important positions in Moran's North Side Gang died in this incident. After this incident, the reporters asked Moran for his response to this incident. Moran shouted, "Only Capone kills like that." Meanwhile, at the time of the incident, Capone claimed to be on vacation at his home in Palm Island, Florida. He chuckled at Moran's accusation. "The only man who kills like that is Bugs Moran," he said mockingly. Although there has not been any statement regarding this incident, everyone believes he is the mastermind. Now, the title of public enemy number 1 is attached to him. President Herbert Hoover ordered his Attorney General William Mitchell to immediately catch Capone. The investigation was led by Detective William Sullivan of the Chicago Police Department. The police identified dozens or even hundreds of shots using machine guns, revolver shots, and shotguns. This Valentine's Day massacre case was huge, but none of the perpetrators were arrested, even though it was clear who was behind it. No definitive evidence was found, and not a single eyewitness agreed to be questioned, proving that this action was highly organized. Nonetheless, the police identified several people who were most likely involved in the Valentine's Day massacre. John Scalise is one of the most likely members, as he was also involved in several shootings. Jack McGurn, enforcer and bouncer in Capone's Chicago outfit. He was nicknamed by reporters Blonde Alibi because he claimed that when the incident occurred, he was spending time with his girlfriend Louise Rolfe. To strengthen his alibi, he married her sometime later. Frank Rio, Capone's bodyguard; Albert Anselmi, an important member who had previously done violent work. The last was Fred Burke, a man who was strongly associated with the incident. He owns the same weapon that was used on the day of the massacre. His physical description was also the same as that of an eyewitness. That is, his front teeth were toothless. He was involved in an accident in December 1929 that killed Charles Scully. He ran away all the way to Green City, Missouri. He was arrested there after one of the residents recognized his face from the True Crime magazine. Finally, Burke was jailed for murder in 1931, not for the Valentine's Day massacre. 9 years later, he died in prison of a heart attack. Capone was the same. He was arrested for tax evasion in 1931, not for the massacre. He died of syphilis in prison in 1939.